In less than 50 years, a nomadic people from the cold grasslands of Central Asia created the largest contiguous land empire in human history. They conquered kingdoms, destroyed ancient cities, and sent fear across Europe, the Middle East, and East Asia. Yet within just a few generations, this seemingly unstoppable empire fractured, weakened, and collapsed. How did the Mongols rise so fast? And why did they fall just as quickly? This is the story of the Mongol Empire, from its violent beginnings to its terrifying height, and finally, to its slow and inevitable decline. Before the rise of the Mongols, there was no Mongol Empire, and not even a unified Mongol people. The Mongols lived as nomads on the vast Eurasian steppe, a harsh environment of endless grasslands, brutal winters, and limited resources. Survival depended on horses, livestock, and constant movement. There were no permanent cities, no centralized government, and no written laws. Society was divided into tribes and clans that frequently fought one another over pasture land, water, and survival. Loyalty shifted quickly. Alliances were fragile. Violence was a normal part of life. At the same time, powerful sedentary states surrounded the steppe. To the south were the Jin dynasty in northern China and the Tangut state of western Xia. To the west lay Islamic kingdoms in Central Asia. These states often interfered in steppe politics, supporting one tribe against another to keep the nomads divided. The Mongols were poor, fragmented, and constantly under pressure. But this harsh world also created something dangerous. Generations of hardened warriors who knew nothing but war. All they lacked was unity. That unity came from one man, Temujin. Temujin's early life was shaped by tragedy. His father, a tribal leader, was poisoned by rivals. Soon after, Temujin's family was abandoned by their own tribe and left to survive alone. They lived in extreme poverty, hunted for food, and were treated as outcasts. Temujin learned early that the old tribal system offered no protection. Loyalty based on bloodlines meant nothing when power shifted. As he grew older, Temujin began to gather followers, not by noble birth, but by loyalty and ability. Former enemies could become trusted allies. Commoners could rise to command positions. This was revolutionary in steppe society. Through a combination of ruthless warfare, strategic marriages, and carefully chosen alliances, Temujin defeated rival tribes one by one. He punished betrayal without mercy, but rewarded loyalty generously. In 1206, the leaders of the Mongol tribes gathered at a great assembly known as a Kurultai. There, Temujin was proclaimed Genghis Khan, meaning universal ruler. For the first time in history, the Mongols were united under a single leader. Genghis Khan did not merely unite tribes, he transformed Mongol society into a military state. Every able-bodied man became a soldier. The army was organized into a strict decimal system, ensuring discipline and coordination. Orders were absolute. Desertion and disobedience were punishable by death. The Mongols fought differently from their enemies. They relied on speed, mobility, and psychological warfare. Horse archers could strike quickly, retreat, and attack again before enemies could respond. Cities that resisted were often destroyed completely, sending a clear message to others. Once unified, the Mongols expanded with astonishing speed. Their first targets were nearby states. Western Xia was forced into submission. Then came the Jin dynasty of northern China. Mongol armies swept across northern China, capturing and devastating cities, eventually forcing the Jin to collapse. But the Mongols did not stop there. In 1218, a Mongol trade mission was massacred by the Khwarezmian Empire in Central Asia. Genghis Khan treated this not as an accident, but as an insult demanding punishment. What followed was one of the most destructive campaigns in history. Mongol armies poured into Central Asia, capturing and annihilating cities like Bukhara and Samarkand. Entire populations were slaughtered or enslaved. Irrigation systems were destroyed, turning fertile lands into deserts. Within a few years, the Khwarezmian Empire ceased to exist. Mongol forces continued westward, reaching the Caucasus and Eastern Europe. In 1223, they defeated a coalition of Russian princes at the Battle of the Kalka River. Though they temporarily withdrew, Europe had received its first warning. By the time of Genghis Khan's death in 1227, the Mongol Empire stretched from northern China to Central Asia. But the empire was only beginning. After Genghis Khan's death, power passed to his sons and grandsons. Under Ogedai Khan, the empire expanded further. The Jin dynasty was completely destroyed. Korea was forced into submission. Mongol armies advanced deep into Eastern Europe. In 1241, Mongol forces crushed the armies of Poland and Hungary, sending shockwaves across Europe. Kings fled. Cities prepared for siege. Churches prayed for deliverance. Europe was saved not by victory, but by chance. Ogedai Khan died in 1241, forcing Mongol commanders to return east to participate in the succession. The invasion of Europe halted permanently. Despite their success, cracks began to appear. The Mongol Empire was vast, culturally diverse, and difficult to govern. Genghis Khan had divided the empire among his sons, creating semi-independent territories. As generations passed, loyalty to the great Khan weakened. Still, one ruler attempted to restore unity and transform the empire. His name was Kublai Khan. Kublai Khan, a grandson of Genghis Khan, ruled differently from his predecessors. Rather than remain a steppe warlord, he embraced Chinese administration, bureaucracy, and culture. In 1271, he declared himself emperor of the Yuan dynasty and moved the capital to Beijing. Under Kublai Khan, the Mongol Empire reached its greatest territorial extent. Southern China was conquered after decades of war. Trade flourished along the Silk Road. Ideas, technologies, and goods flowed between East and West in an era sometimes called the Pax Mongolica. But this transformation came at a cost. By adopting Chinese systems, Kublai Khan alienated many Mongol elites. The empire was no longer a single political entity, but a collection of khanates with different cultures, religions, and interests. Meanwhile, Mongol expansion began to fail. Attempts to conquer Japan ended in disaster, as Mongol fleets were destroyed by powerful storms. In Southeast Asia, Mongol armies struggled against unfamiliar terrain and fierce resistance. Campaigns in Vietnam and Java ended in costly defeats. Internally, the empire fractured. The Golden Horde ruled Russia and Eastern Europe. The Ilkhanate controlled Persia and the Middle East. The Chagatai Khanate dominated Central Asia. The Yuan dynasty ruled China. In theory, these regions still recognized the Great Khan. In reality, they acted independently. As unity faded, so did Mongol power. In China, the Yuan dynasty faced growing unrest. Mongol rulers favored their own people and discriminated against the local population. Corruption spread. Natural disasters worsened suffering. Rebellions erupted across the countryside. In 1368, a former peasant rebel named Zhu Yuanzhang captured Beijing and founded the Ming dynasty. The Mongols were driven out of China, retreating back to the steppe. Elsewhere, the Mongol successor states weakened under internal conflict and external pressure. The Golden Horde declined. The Ilkhanate collapsed. By the early modern period, the Mongol world had fragmented into smaller, weaker powers. The greatest empire in history had faded into memory. The story of the Mongol Empire is a paradox. Their strength came from unity, discipline, and relentless expansion. But that same expansion created an empire too vast to govern, too diverse to unify, and too divided to survive. The Mongols conquered the world through war, but they could not rule it forever. In the end, the Mongol Empire did not fall to a single enemy. It fell to its own size, its internal divisions, and the limits of power built on conquest. And that is the final lesson of the Mongol Empire. The same forces that create greatness can also ensure its collapse.